My name is Heather, and what I'm about to share with you is something I never imagined experiencing. I was a history teacher, living an ordinary life, until one day everything changed. I died. For 9 minutes, I was gone from this world, and during that time, I saw things that no one had ever told me before. I crossed over and was shown hidden truths, things that have been kept from us for generations. Jesus revealed something about Black America that shook me to my core, and now I feel a deep responsibility to share it with you. The morning of my death was nothing unusual. I woke up to my usual alarm, groggy from a restless night, but determined to push through the day. I had a stack of essays to grade and a lesson plan prepared on the civil rights movement. As a history teacher, I was passionate about truth, about making sure my students understood the struggles and triumphs that shaped America. But looking back now, I realized that the truth I was teaching wasn't the whole story. I grabbed a quick cup of coffee and rushed out the door, barely taking time to eat breakfast. It was just another Tuesday. The school was buzzing with students when I arrived, the usual chatter and shuffling of books filling the halls. I smiled at a few colleagues as I made my way to my classroom, setting down my bag before diving into the lesson. We were discussing key figures in Black history: Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X. I felt proud of the knowledge I was passing down. And then everything stopped. A sharp, searing pain shot through my chest, like a bolt of lightning. My vision blurred, and my breath became shallow. My knees buckled, and I barely registered the screams of my students as I collapsed to the floor. I could hear them calling my name, their voices panicked, but I was already slipping away. The pain was overwhelming, yet at the same time I felt detached from it. It was as if I was both inside and outside of my body at once. I felt myself floating. The classroom, my students, the sounds, they all faded. There was no sense of time, no struggle, just a strange weightlessness. I knew something was happening, something beyond my control. The last thought that crossed my mind before everything turned dark was, is this really it? The moment I left my body, I became aware of a strange sensation. It wasn't pain anymore, it was peace, an eerie kind of stillness, like floating in warm water with no effort. I was no longer bound by my physical form. I could see everything happening below me. My students, their frantic faces, the paramedics pushing through the door. I should have felt afraid, but I didn't. Then I was pulled, not by force, not by something external, but by a presence that felt like pure love. I was being drawn away from the classroom, away from the physical world, into something greater. I didn't resist because it felt natural, like returning home after a long journey. As I moved, I realized I was no longer in the school. The world around me blurred into darkness, but not the kind of darkness that frightens. This was different. It was calm, like the moments just before dawn. I had no body, no weight, yet I existed fully. Then a light appeared in the distance. It wasn't just a bright light. It was alive. It pulsed like a heartbeat, calling me forward. I didn't walk toward it. I simply moved, as though the space itself was carrying me closer. The closer I got, the more I felt something indescribable. Pure love, pure understanding, pure truth. And then I crossed over. As I crossed into the light, everything changed. It wasn't like waking up from a dream. It was like waking up for the first time. Every part of me, my soul, my consciousness, felt heightened. Colors were richer, sounds were deeper, and emotions were raw and pure. I was moving through a tunnel, but it wasn't just a passageway. It was like an entire existence unto itself. The walls shimmered with energy, with memories, with something beyond human comprehension. It was like I was traveling through time, through every moment that ever was or ever would be. But what struck me the most were the figures. Along the edges of the tunnel I saw them, tall, majestic beings, dressed in flowing robes. They weren't angels in the way we imagine them. They were something more, something ancient. Their eyes shone with wisdom, their faces with knowledge untold. They were watching me, but not in judgment. They were waiting. I felt no fear, only curiosity. Who were they? Why did they seem familiar? And then I felt a presence, a force more powerful than anything I had ever known. It wasn't just around me, it was within me, flowing through every part of my being. I knew without a doubt that this presence was Jesus. He wasn't just standing there. He was the light. He was the tunnel. Everything, every soul, every piece of existence moved through him. I wanted to speak, but I had no mouth. I wanted to bow, but I had no body. Instead, my soul simply knew this was the source of all things, and he was about to show me the truth. I had been taught about Jesus my entire life. I had seen his face in paintings, heard his name in sermons. But none of that could compare to standing before him. The moment I was in his presence, I felt everything in me dissolve, every worry, every doubt, every question. He knew me, completely and fully, in a way I never even knew myself. His light didn't just shine, it embraced. It didn't just illuminate, it revealed. He was both overwhelming and familiar, divine and personal. Then he spoke, not with words, but through me. His voice wasn't sound, it was knowing. "Heather, it is time you see." And in an instant the space around us shifted. The tunnel, the shimmering figures, they faded. I was no longer just in his presence. I was inside his knowing. I saw time unravel. I saw the past, the present, and something else, something hidden from human eyes. And then he showed me the secret, a truth that had been buried, forgotten, rewritten, a truth about Black America that changed everything I thought I knew. The moment Jesus spoke, I was no longer just standing in the light. I was inside it. The entire concept of time shattered before me. I had spent my life believing time was linear, a straight path from past to present to future. But now I saw that time was not a line at all. It was like a vast ocean where every moment, past, present, and even the future, existed all at once. I could see history unfolding in layers. It wasn't like looking at old film reels. It was as if I was standing in multiple time periods simultaneously. I saw ancient civilizations rise and fall, saw wars fought and won, and saw decisions being made that would ripple through generations. Then Jesus turned to me, his presence pulsing with something deeper, something urgent. "There is a truth buried in time, hidden from those who seek it," he said. And suddenly I was moving, not walking, not flying, but simply being placed into moments of history I had never known. What I was about to see would challenge everything I had ever taught in my history class. I found myself in a different era. The air was thick with heat, the smell of the ocean lingering in the wind. I stood on the shores of Africa, watching ships dock in the distance. I knew immediately where I was, the time of the transatlantic slave trade. I wanted to turn away, but Jesus was beside me. He made me watch. I saw the pain, the suffering, the unimaginable cruelty inflicted upon those taken from their homeland. But then, something unexpected happened. I felt their prayers. Despite the horror, there was an unbreakable strength in these people. Their spirits were not shattered, even as their bodies were bound in chains. I saw them singing in the depths of the ships, their voices rising like incense into the heavens. They weren't just singing songs. They were calling upon something divine. Jesus turned to me and said, "What they took from them was not just their freedom. They stole their legacy, their divine calling. But it was never lost. It has always been here, waiting to be restored." And then, time shifted again. I was moving through different moments of history, enslaved people whispering prayers in the cotton fields, secret gatherings where knowledge was passed down, messages written in spirituals that carried a deeper meaning. I saw leaders, revolutionaries, healers, hidden figures whose impact was erased from history. And then I saw it, the reason I was shown all this. We arrived in a time that felt eerily familiar, the present day. I saw streets I recognized, cities I had visited, faces that looked like my students back home, but I was seeing it with new eyes. Jesus pointed, and suddenly I could see what had been hidden in plain sight. I saw that Black Americans were not just a people who had endured injustice. They were a people called for something greater. I saw that their struggles were not just struggles. They were spiritual battles meant to forge something powerful within them. They were chosen to carry something the world has long forgotten, Jesus said. And then he revealed the secret to me. I saw that through every hardship, slavery, segregation, systemic oppression, there was something else woven into their history, a divine anointing, a power that had been passed down generation after generation, even when they didn't realize it. The prayers of their ancestors still echoed in the spiritual realm, forming an unbreakable shield of protection. The songs, the culture, the unshakable spirit. It was all evidence of something much deeper. Their resilience is not just human strength, Jesus said. It is the manifestation of a spiritual inheritance, and that inheritance is waking up. I saw revivals, movements, and a shift beginning to happen. People were rediscovering their connection to something ancient and powerful. And then he showed me why this had been hidden. I saw men in dark suits, gathered in rooms filled with books and documents. Their faces were unreadable, their words whispered but filled with intention. They weren't discussing laws or policies, they were discussing control. They have always known, Jesus said. The ones in power have always known the truth, but they feared what would happen if it was revealed. I watched as history was rewritten, as narratives were carefully crafted to erase the spiritual power Black Americans carried. I saw how they were systematically kept from their own history, not just their ancestral past, but their spiritual past. I saw books removed from libraries, spiritual practices demonized, powerful leaders discredited or silenced. I saw how fear was used as a tool, fear of their own power, fear of stepping into their divine purpose. But the time of deception is ending, Jesus said. I felt it in my very soul, a shift, a breaking of chains not just in the physical world, but in the spiritual. The awakening had already begun. It is time for them to remember, Jesus continued. Time to reclaim what was taken. Time to step into the role they were always meant to fulfill. I understood then why I had been allowed to return. My life wasn't over. I was meant to share this message. The world needed to know. The truth could no longer be hidden. As Jesus stood beside me, I felt a deep sadness, not just my own, but his. It was as if the weight of centuries of suffering, of lost knowledge, of forgotten truths rested in that moment. He showed me how a sacred inheritance had been passed down through generations of Black Americans, but it had been hidden, diluted, and stolen. I saw visions of ancient times, kingdoms, spiritual warriors, people who walked in divine wisdom and power. These were the ancestors, the ones who knew their connection to the Most High, the ones who understood that prayer wasn't just words, but a force that moved mountains in the unseen realm. They were given something precious, Jesus said, a covenant, a power, a divine calling. But when their bodies were taken, so was their knowledge, and yet it never truly left. I saw how despite everything, this spiritual power remained within them, buried deep but never destroyed. It lived in their music, in their prayers, in the very rhythm of their souls. It lived in the faith that endured, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. The world has told them they are powerless, Jesus continued, but in truth, they have always been among the most powerful. The enemy has fought hardest against them because he fears what they will become when they remember. And then I saw something else. A rising, a spiritual awakening unlike anything before. It was happening now. The hidden truth was beginning to surface, and those who were meant to carry it were starting to remember. Jesus stretched out his hand, and suddenly I was surrounded by voices, thousands, millions of voices, layered over one another like waves upon the ocean. They were praying. At first I didn't understand. Who were they? Where were they? Then I saw them. People throughout time, enslaved men and women whispering prayers in the dead of night, their hands raised to the sky. Mothers crying out for their children, fathers asking for strength, warriors praying for justice. And then I saw those in the present day, pastors, teachers, musicians, activists, all continuing the prayers that had never stopped. Their prayers never faded, Jesus said. They created a shield, a protection, a connection that could not be broken. Even when they felt unheard, even when they felt abandoned, heaven listened. And now those prayers are being answered. I felt the power of those prayers flowing like rivers, reaching through time, touching those who had yet to be born. It was as if they had been waiting, accumulating, building for this very moment in history. Their ancestors covered them in prayer, Jesus continued, and those prayers are now rising to the surface. The time has come for them to claim what was always theirs. I realized then that this wasn't just about history, it was about the present. The prayers of the past were still shaping the future. Jesus turned to me, his expression both urgent and filled with love. "This is why you were sent back," he said. "This truth must be known. It is time for them to awaken fully, time for them to step into their calling." I felt the weight of those words, the responsibility, the knowledge that many would reject this message, that others would try to bury it once again. But I also felt something else. Hope. I saw glimpses of the future, of people standing together, no longer bound by the false narratives that had been fed to them. I saw communities rising, reclaiming not just their history, but their spiritual power. I saw healings, miracles, movements filled with divine energy. And I saw those who would resist. Forces that had spent centuries ensuring this truth remained buried. They would try to silence it again, to discredit those who spoke it. But they cannot stop what has already begun, Jesus said. They can only delay the inevitable. The question is, who will answer the call? Who will step forward? I felt his gaze pierce through me. You must tell them. You must tell them that time is short and the awakening is at hand. I knew then that my life would never be the same. I had been given a mission, and I couldn't ignore it. I felt a shift, a pulling sensation, as if I were being drawn away from this divine realm. Panic surged through me. I didn't want to leave. I had never felt so whole, so real, as I did in that moment. "It is not yet your time," Jesus said. "There is work to do." I pleaded silently. I wanted to stay. The love, the peace, the truth. It was all so much more real than the life I had known on earth. "But you must go back," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "You were chosen to witness. You were chosen to tell them." Suddenly, I felt the weight of my body again. The pain, the struggle to breathe, the beeping of machines, it all came rushing back. I gasped, my eyes flying open. The doctors shouted, nurses rushed in. I could hear voices saying, "She's back. We have a pulse." Tears blurred my vision. I was alive, but I was not the same person who had died. I had been sent back with a message, and I knew that sharing it would change everything. When I opened my eyes, everything felt different. The fluorescent lights above me flickered, the sound of beeping machines filled my ears, and the sterile scent of the hospital surrounded me. Yet I knew I wasn't the same person who had died. The doctors and nurses were in a frenzy, checking my vitals, speaking in urgent tones. I could hear my family crying somewhere nearby, but all I could think about was what I had seen. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, my body weak. My mind was racing with everything Jesus had revealed to me, the hidden history, the truth about prayer, the spiritual power Black Americans had carried for centuries without realizing it. I had to tell someone. But how? Who would believe me? Over the next few days, as I recovered, I barely spoke about what happened. My family assumed I was too weak, too overwhelmed. They weren't wrong, but it wasn't just the trauma of nearly dying. It was the weight of knowing. I sat in my hospital bed, staring out the window, watching the sun rise and set. It was as if I had returned to the world, but I didn't belong to it in the same way. Everything felt thin, like a veil between this reality and something far greater. And I could still feel Jesus' voice echoing within me. "Tell them the time is short." When I was discharged from the hospital, I knew my life would never be the same. The problem was, I didn't know where to start. How do you tell people that you died, and Jesus revealed something that contradicts what they've been taught their whole lives? How do you tell them that history as we know it is incomplete, that something powerful has been kept hidden, and that an awakening is happening right now? I struggled with fear of being dismissed, of being ridiculed. After all, I was just a history teacher. Would anyone take me seriously? But I couldn't ignore it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the visions again. I heard the prayers of ancestors, felt their power rising through time. I knew what I had been shown was real. I tried telling a close friend, someone I trusted. She listened, nodding carefully, but I could see it in her eyes. She thought I was just experiencing some post-trauma confusion. That's when I realized this truth wouldn't be accepted easily. The world had spent too long covering it up. People were conditioned to ignore the spiritual reality all around them, but that didn't mean I would stay silent. I started writing everything down, every vision, every word Jesus spoke to me, every moment I spent in the divine presence. I knew I had to get the message out, even if only a few would listen, because I had seen what happens if we don't. The awakening was coming, whether people were ready or not. I don't know why I was chosen to experience this. I was just a teacher, living an ordinary life. But I do know one thing. I was sent back with a purpose. Jesus made it clear, the time of deception is ending. The truth is rising, and those who are meant to receive it will feel it in their souls. If you're reading this, maybe that includes you. Maybe something in your spirit is stirring, like a memory you can't quite place. Maybe you've always felt like there was more to history, to spirituality, to the struggle of Black Americans. I'm telling you now, you're right. The prayers of your ancestors are still alive. The strength, the wisdom, the calling, it has never left. The world has tried to erase it, to make you forget who you are. But the awakening is here. I saw it. I felt it. And now, I'm passing this message on to you. Jesus didn't just show me history, he showed me your future, and it's powerful beyond what anyone has told you. Will you listen? Will you step into what was meant for you? I pray that you do, because the time is short, and the world is waiting for you to remember who you really are. The days after my release from the hospital were filled with a heaviness I couldn't shake. It wasn't just the exhaustion from nearly dying, it was something much deeper. I had been to the other side. I had seen what most people would never believe. And now, I was back in a world that felt strangely unreal, like I had stepped into a dream that no longer made sense. Food tasted different, sounds felt sharper, even the air around me seemed heavier. I realized I wasn't just adjusting physically, I was spiritually different. But with that awareness came an unbearable loneliness. Who could I tell? How could I share something so massive? I tried journaling everything, hoping to make sense of it, but the words never seemed big enough. I thought about going back to teaching, slipping back into my old life, pretending none of it had happened, but I knew that was impossible. I had seen too much, and worse, I could still feel the truth pressing into me, like an unspoken command. Tell them, time is short. I wasn't just given knowledge, I was given a burden. And the more I hesitated, the heavier it became. The first time I tried to tell my story, I was met with doubt. I spoke to a pastor I had known for years, expecting him to listen with an open heart. But as I described what Jesus had shown me, the hidden truth, the spiritual inheritance of Black Americans, the deception that had kept it buried, his face darkened. "This isn't biblical," he said finally. I felt my stomach drop. But I saw it. He shook his head. "You had a traumatic experience. The mind plays tricks." "No," I interrupted, my voice shaking. "This wasn't a trick. Jesus showed me. He told me." He sighed. "Be careful, Heather. The enemy is deceptive. You don't want to be led astray." Led astray. I almost laughed. I had stood before Jesus. I had felt his presence, seen the prayers of ancestors woven through time. There was no deception in that. But I realized then, people weren't ready. Some had been too conditioned to reject anything that didn't fit within their existing beliefs. And others knew the truth but didn't want it revealed. I could feel the resistance, not just from people, but from something deeper, something unseen. The same forces that had worked for centuries to bury this truth weren't going to let it rise without a fight. And I was now part of that battle. That night, as I wrestled with doubt and frustration, I had a dream. Except it didn't feel like a dream. I found myself back in the presence of Jesus. The same brilliant light, the same overwhelming love. But this time, his expression was serious. "You must understand, Heather," he said. "This is not just history, it is prophecy." I watched as scenes unfolded before me. People waking up, remembering who they were, reclaiming lost knowledge. I saw communities rising, breaking free from spiritual and mental chains. But I also saw resistance, darkness fighting back, attempts to silence, to distort, to suppress. "The awakening has begun," Jesus said, "but many will not see it. Many will be too afraid to accept it, and some will try to stop it altogether." I felt an urgency rise within me. "Tell them," he said one last time. "Tell them before it is too late." I jolted awake, my heart pounding. I knew then I had no choice. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. The time was now, and I would not stay silent. From the moment I woke up from that dream, I knew I could never go back to my old life. Everything I had built, everything I had believed before my near-death experience, it all seemed so small compared to what I now understood. I wasn't just given knowledge, I was given a mission. I could no longer sit in a classroom and teach history from books that I now knew were incomplete. I couldn't look at the world the same way, knowing that so much had been hidden, so much had been stolen. Jesus had shown me the power that had been buried, the truth that had been covered up, and the awakening that was now unfolding before us. But I also knew that this message would not be accepted easily. Some would dismiss it, some would mock it, and some would try to stop it from spreading. Still, I knew one thing for certain: I had to share it. So I began writing. I poured out everything I had seen, the prayers of the ancestors, the divine inheritance, the spiritual strength that had never been broken. I spoke about the deception, the forces that had tried for centuries to keep this truth hidden. I wrote about the awakening, the movement that was happening right now, the stirring in people's souls that they could feel even if they couldn't explain it. And I wrote about the urgency, because the time is short. Jesus made it clear. The awakening is happening now, and those who were meant to hear this message will feel it deep within them, like an echo of something they already knew but had forgotten. I don't know who will receive this message. I don't know how far it will reach, but I do know this: if you're reading this, it's not by accident. The time to awaken is now. The time to remember is now. The prayers of your ancestors have never stopped working, and the truth is rising to the surface. Jesus told me to tell them, and now I'm telling you. Will you listen? Will you seek the truth for yourself? Or will you let history repeat itself? The choice is yours. But know this: no matter what, the awakening cannot be stopped. The truth will no longer be buried. The time has come, and you were meant to be part of it.